Alright, what's going on, guys? We are now in the latter half of February, coming up very soon on the 2-year anniversary of Elden Ring's release, and the 1-year mark since Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtree was announced to be in development, and there are a lot of people expecting more info on the DLC in the coming days, such as a gameplay or story trailer, or even a potential shadow drop. But over the past few weeks, we've been keeping up with all the news, breaking down every little piece of info we can find, and today we have even more. We've got several orders of business to break down, starting off with more updates to the Elden Ring DLC files, and essential confirmation that what we were looking at all along were the final stages of development for Shadow of the Erdtree. Then we've got some very interesting information from the Bandai Namco financial report, as well as legal documents breaking down a transferal of the Elden Ring IP, which may explain why everything around this DLC has been so quiet. And then we're going to talk about what we can expect in the coming week, and if we really are going to get a trailer or a shadow drop on the anniversary. But as we get into all that today, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring DLC and enjoy the lore and discussion surrounding the game, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's begin. If you are a regular here on the channel, then you know one thing we've been keeping up with regularly are the backend files of the DLC, which can be publicly accessed over on SteamDB. And there we can see what work's been done every time a new build of Elden Ring is updated behind the scenes, and I'll give you the basic rundown of the timeline as we've covered in other videos. So almost exactly a month ago, a new DLC package was added to Elden Ring, included among the payable DLCs, such as pre-order bonuses and add-ons like the adventure guide. It could have been any purchasable content for Elden Ring, but then we started seeing some changes when it started receiving development work and being added to a playable version of the game on the back end. We saw this DLC package added to almost every single depot of the game, meaning that whatever it was a substantial part of gameplay and was now being tested for quality assurance, which is one of the final stages of development where they allow people outside the company to test it and make sure there's no game-breaking glitches and that everything works as intended. Which brings us to the latest update, where the Elden Ring DLC package was updated right alongside the digital art book and original soundtrack, and this is a significant development. In case you had any doubts that what we were looking at was Shadow of the Erdtree, you can now put those to bed, because the only thing that would affect the soundtrack and art book alongside it is Shadow of the Erdtree, because of course a major expansion would add new concept art and environmental and boss soundtracks to the game. Now the reason this would need to be updated on the Steam side is of course because people that buy the DLC will need to receive updates to the art book and the soundtrack they already own digitally to include the new pieces that the DLC contains. Now granted, the art book that came digitally was a bit lackluster and may or may not give us the concept art of the DLC content, but the soundtrack most definitely will. And so housekeeping things like this, like QA testing, are one of the final stages of getting this rolled out to the public, or at the very least, getting it prepared for pre-orders to make sure everyone has a very clear picture of what they're buying. And those are things we are able to see on SteamDB. Now as for a specific timeline that we can gauge from this, we can't really get specific with it. We're not able to bring anything down to days or weeks based off this data alone, but we can be certain in that we are in the final stages, and it won't be that much longer until the public knows about it, is able to buy it on the Steam page. But whether or not that happens within the next week is not something I'd want to bet on, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. Also in the news, we have a pretty bombshell story that came out a few days ago regarding the transferring of the Elden Ring IP. A few days ago, some documents were discovered within public records breaking down a transaction of the trademark for Elden Ring. So you can see there the subject of the transaction is Elden Ring, with the current owner listed as FromSoftware. Now if we go into the details of that transaction, we can see a date of April 24th, 2023, and the details describe a change of ownership from Bandai Namco Entertainment to FromSoftware. So what does that mean? Well, if you've played Elden Ring, then you probably got flashbanged by the big white Bandai Namco logo that pops up when you start up the game. This is because Bandai Namco are the publishers of Elden Ring and owned the IP, which means they decide things like how the game gets marketed outside of Japan, who can use the Elden Ring license for making products, and other things like events such as the Elden Ring orchestral concerts. Well, according to this transaction, it seems like that's no longer the case, as of April 2023. But Bandai Namco has still been involved with Elden Ring since then. There are still Elden Ring collaborations going on, and Bandai Namco advertising Elden Ring. So it's not like FromSoftware and Elden Ring are now split up. There's still likely a contract involved binding Elden Ring to Bandai Namco for a time. We don't have those details. However, what it does look like is the decisions involving the Elden Ring game are going to be made by FromSoftware going forward. Some of you may have heard the story that goes around about Dark Souls 2 and 3, with the reason for those games' existence being tied to the fact that Bandai Namco wanted Dark Souls to be be a trilogy. And there could have very well been something going on with Elden Ring like that made FromSoftware want to take the IP back. But with FromSoftware's history and sequels, and Miyazaki's admitted displeasure with them, it's likely that this decision just put a damper on any hopes for an Elden Ring 2. But regardless, Bandai Namco is still going to be making money from Elden Ring, as disclosed in their financial report, which was honestly a grim read. From Video Games Chronicle, they say, Bandai Namco has confirmed that it recently canceled at least 5 games in development and said it plans to have stricter quality control going forward. For its third fiscal quarter ended in December, the publisher said that its digital division, which mainly includes video games, saw an 8.9% drop in net sales compared to the same period last year and a 96.5% drop in income. So they made almost half as much money this year as they did last year. And the reason they give for that is because Elden Ring was simply too successful that there was no way they could have replicated that same amount of income. Now, I do think there was probably more to the story than that they didn't want to tell the investors, which probably played a part in them canceling 5 of their upcoming games. But when asked about the future outlook, they said, as for the lineup of titles under development, we are preparing large-scale downloadable content for Elden Ring and the new Dragon Ball game, so please look forward to it. So it seems like Bandai isn't in the best of states right now with all this news, but they will still be involved with Elden Ring going forward, at least to some extent. So what do I think about all of this, and what do I think it means for the anniversary coming up? Personally, I think all this news about Bandai Namco and the issues with the trademark or IP likely played a part in the reason we haven't had any official word on the DLC in the past year. I don't think I would go so far to say that they had internal delays. I don't think we have really any grounds for predicting that, but this whole thing has just been weird. It's unprecedented for FromSoftware to announce a DLC like this and then not say anything for a full 365 days. Now, of course, we're all forgetting about Armored Core 6 that took up this year, which likely took the priority over anything they were working on for Elden Ring and bought them time to kind of sit on their laurels, put their heads down and get work done. But even so, it's weird for them not to say a word, which is why I hesitate to expect anything big over the next week. When we got the announcement last year, we had multiple hints that something was coming, official hints, with Bandai telling us to be on the lookout for news in the days and weeks to come, and Miyazaki stating directly at award shows that they had more planned for Elden Ring. Comparing that to now, and things are way too quiet. But we have SteamDB telling us a different story, almost to the point where the DLC could drop any day now based on the work that's been done over there. So I think it's hard to say for certain that the anniversary will bring anything. I sure hope it does, and I think it would make a lot of sense if it did, but I wouldn't want to bet on it. I think if it doesn't, there's only one more thing I could hope to see it by before I think any and all predictions whatsoever go out the window, and it's a point that Fextra Life made in their most recent video talking about the DLC, where they discussed that a big possibility is the Game Developers Conference, which is one of the biggest gatherings of game devs where they recognize the greatest games over the last year, and that would be a great opportunity to show off the DLC or break it down a little bit more with further information that we didn't get in the trailer happening beforehand. Now that'll be happening on March 18th. So what I'm going to be doing personally is keeping my eyes wide open for the next month up until March 18th in GDC, because realistically a trailer could come out any day with no prior announcement. But if we don't hear anything at all by then I'd hesitate to predict this ever again. I do hope that for the 2-year anniversary they give us some kind of newsletter, some kind of reassurance that a trailer's not too far off, but we'll just have to wait and see. But y'all let me know what you think about all the news we discussed today, especially the stuff with Bandai Namco. That seems like a big deal. And are you keeping hope alive for the anniversary, or do you think it's going to come and go with no word whatsoever? Either way though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.